one by one.
The sets were really fun to work on and really fun to see them build and exciting to see them go up.
Each set is such a character in this film, and New York is an important part of this movie. The way the buildings are lit, it'll have like a romantic feel to it, I think, also.
I think what the most fun making this movie was we got to go see New York in a way we'd never seen it. You don't usually get to see it. You know, usually walking around New York, you're looking up. We went on the tops of all these amazing buildings. Needless to say, we can't actually shoot on the rooftops of Manhattan, so it's been a real challenge from a production design standpoint.
Neil Spisak truly loves New York, understands New York, and was able to bring his passion of New York to the film.
A production designer is the person who works with the director and the director of photography and the producers and the visual effects team to conceptualize and make all of the ideas that everybody has in theory become actually materialized. Sam is a Spidey fan from way back, and his interest was extremely infectious. And it was sort of a bizarre road getting introduced to Spider-Man, actually. I mean, I knew Spider-Man from the TV series and from cartoons, but I had never really read comic books. And it was an interesting journey learning about who Spider-Man is and how he's portrayed in the comic books.
I didn't feel it was proper to have a super stylized world, like a comic book world like you see in a lot of comic book films. I felt that the most important thing to do was to create a real world. There are parts of New York that are magical. So what we decided to do was just to create a whole city of those realistic, magical parts of New York.
Once you conceptualize what the film is about and how the film needs to look and what locations scenes actually take place in, then the execution process is a puzzle that you kind of work out piece by piece. How do you retain the control that a filmmaker needs to tell a story? Well, obviously the best place is on a soundstage, but the reality is that you can't just go into New York City and shoot anywhere you want to. So a lot of times you bring it back and you make it work because it's the only way you can retain control and get the shots you want to tell the story.
I'm trying to spice up the area where Spider-Man plays a bit of his dialogue. Not that it's bad.
Well, that isn't finished. I mean,
I was just asking him for a little running water down here.
each situation that Spider-Man is in is a different design. It has to accommodate that specific movement. That is what the movie's about, is Spider-Man being able to move through New York and the way he moves through New York and where he puts himself.
We see Spider-Man up against like buildings and like an architectural element that you'd see from the street would be really small, but when Spider-Man is up against it, all of a sudden it's like a huge detail. So you get to see kind of architecture in a way that you would normally see from the street.
We just need to come up with a look, and the construction is the one who figured it out how to hold it together. I'm working on the Osborn mansion, the Green Goblin house. This is gonna be the fireplace on his living room. All the wood paneling get totally detailed, the columns, like one by one, everything, to the last molding.
One of the design elements that I tried to incorporate into the film as a whole is a slightly overscaled and somewhat classical architecture. Building tops and places that you normally aren't on buildings, closer to the upper architecture of the buildings of New York. So the idea that this balcony is further up in the building rather than being down in the street, and the idea that you have an overview made it all the easier to incorporate the Goblin on its glider above the city, and the fact that Spidey could swing in from the upper parts of the city as opposed to being in on the street.
Really, it's like if you look at the comics, you flip through the pages and you look where Peter grew up, it's in this movie. If you look where Peter went to school, it's in the movie. Where would a kid like Peter share an apartment today? It's the apartment. He did a great job to be able to put together a very fancy side of Manhattan, because it's the Osborn side of the world, with this modest upbringing where Peter comes from. And he connected it beautifully.
What is Spider-Man's world? And certainly he exists at the rooftops of New York. We scouted tons and tons of rooftops of New York, so we got to see a whole side of New York that most people never get to see. And we're bringing that to the film, and I think it's very exciting.
It's the real world. It's a recognizable world, obviously somehow adapted a little bit to embrace these characters. It's contemporary, it's not futuristic, it's not, you know, hopefully it'll have a kind of timeless quality.
Although it's an action film and an adventure film and a fantasy film, all of those parts of this movie work because the basis for the whole story is very human. And I think it makes it all the more interesting and all the better that you believe, you know, Spider-Man can be a part of our world.